Okay, let's spend a few minutes talking about that father of all vampire novels, Dracula. Of course, as we learned, it wasn't the first vampire novel written, or even the first vampire novel written in English. But it is the father of all vampire novels in that it is the best known and most enduring of the vampire novels yet produced. Written in 1897, Dracula, of course, explores sexual transgressions, since those were a focus of Victorian England. But it explores other cultural fears of the period as well. Our sources for this presentation are David Punter and Glynis Byron, James B. Twitchell, and Alan Lloyd Smith. Now, according to literary critics David Punter and Glynis Byron, Dracula explores the breakdown of gender roles that were prevalent at the end of the 19th century. Throughout the century, the Victorian middle class rigorously guarded boundaries of gender roles in ways that were particularly restrictive to women, Punter and Byron point out. But women resisted the restrictions with increasing vigor throughout the 1800s, and became increasingly demanding of autonomy in both sexual and social arenas. What the Victorians referred to as the new woman is demonstrated in several ways in Dracula, Punter and Byron state. One example is the 3 female vampires feeding on a young child that we see in the selection in our text. According to Punter and Byron, those female vampires represent a breakdown of woman's maternal role. Another major character in the novel, whose name is Lucy, is flirtatious from the start, dating 3 men at the same time before finally settling on Arthur, who in the book had recently inherited both money and a title. Now, in the novel, Lucy is the first character that we see Dracula visit, and over the course of several evenings, he kills her and she becomes a vampire. Punter and Byron tell us that Dracula's visits to Lucy release in her what Victorians would have viewed as only a barely repressed sexuality. But neither the non-maternal female vampires we read about in our selection, nor the sexually charged Lucy, represent the Victorians' idea of the new woman, according to literary critic James B. Twitchell. Twitchell maintains that the character who truly represents the Victorian new woman is Mina, the central female character in the novel. Mina is engaged to and later marries Jonathan Harker, the man who is tortured by the female vampires in the selection in our text. Mina is dedicated to helping Harker in his recovery from his encounter in Dracula's Transylvanian castle. Not only that, but she also helps him record his experiences and track down the evil count by serving as a stenographer, all-night typist, and bookkeeper, Twitchell says. And she's even more dedicated to serving as his wife, and then later at the end of the novel, the mother of his children. In other words, she's like the 21st century woman who wants it all and is adept at the various skills needed to obtain and maintain it. Another cultural fear encoded in Dracula is associated with Charles Darwin's work and the theory of evolution, according to literary critic Alan Lloyd Smith. Darwinism was portrayed in both British and American literature of the period as a new way of looking at the connection between the human and the animal, between consciousness and animal instinct, Lloyd Smith states. This new way of envisioning that connection led to concerns during the Victorian era about deviations within the human, and about the ability of consciousness to control instinctual drives and behaviors, Lloyd Smith states. There was a fear of the possibility of converting back to the animal. In the novel, Dracula demonstrates a close association with wolves and has the ability to change into animals himself. There is also, of course, Dracula's consistent indulgence of his instinctual hungers and sexual drives. as Lloyd Smith points out. Now, Lloyd Smith explains that Darwinian concepts also led to a crisis in the status of human beings as superior by God's design, instead of just being one more step in an ongoing evolutionary chain. In addition, Lloyd Smith states, it led to concerns about the body and its drives, particularly the female body and its drives. But through the characters of Lucy, Renfield, and Dracula himself, we see both the female and the male body out of control. Because the difficulties are seen in characters of both genders, the novel demonstrates a cultural dread that humanness itself may not exist at a deeper level within us, and also that fear of slipping back into a biological past, Lloyd Smith maintains. Another cultural fear represented in Dracula results from improved insights into economics, social conventions, and biology that sprang from the relatively new scientific method, according to Lloyd Smith. There was a cultural fear that this new scientism would undermine ideas of free will by indicating that human life is subject to natural forces that are larger than any forces lying within the conscious mind, Lloyd Smith explains. Within the sciences, and particularly in light of Darwin's study, survival of the species is tantamount, Lloyd Smith points out. The highly moral Victorians were uncomfortable with this concept because they feared that morality would be set aside if issues of survival arose. Finally, as Lloyd Smith states, an improved understanding of biology and medicine led to a heightened fear of contagion. Vampire literature, such as Dracula, was particularly fitting to encode those fears because vampirism is spread through bodily fluids, particularly blood. And that kind of makes it seem as if it's a condition that could be an infection, Lloyd Smith explains. I hope this short video helps clarify some of the cultural fears encoded in Dracula. We all know that vampire literature encodes the fear that sexuality will walk the streets in search of innocent prey, but our critics point out that there were other Victorian cultural fears encoded in Dracula as well. Now, of course, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to email me through Canvas because you know I want to answer any questions you might have. Okay, we'll talk again soon, and in the meantime, take good care of yourself and try to find some time to relax and have some fun.